Hello, so I'm going to talk to you about foraging today and why you should forage. I feel that foraging is part of me. The act of foraging has long been forgotten, but our ancestors would have all known how to forage. If you didn't know how to forage, you wouldn't be able to survive. And I feel it's really sad actually that we've lost how to do that. In the last couple of, thousands of years, we've started to farm and the monocrops have come around, and unfortunately we just don't know how to forage anymore. But there's so much food out there everywhere, and it's free as well that you could use, and these foods are absolutely packed full of vitamins and minerals, much more than the ones that are in our supermarkets, because their roots go really down into the earth and they pull up all those minerals and vitamins that we really need. And the ones that we buy from the supermarket, they only have really small roots, so they don't have my goat, they don't have these vitamins and minerals in, because they don't let them grow really deep like the wild plant. It's so therapeutic. It's just so, it's like meditating. Hello lovely. I've just got a little goat join me. She loves foraging too. In fact, foraging's her favourite thing, which she's doing a bit now, eating all the leaves and the brambles around my woods. I feel like there has been a little bit more of a surge in foraging lately, and I think that's a lot down to people wanting to connect again with nature, and foraging really does give us that deep connection with nature. You don't just walk around blindly. Once you've learnt a few plants, you want to look and you want to identify them and find them when you're out there, and then that leads to wanting to know what the other plants are and the trees and the birds and everything around you, and you have a much more deeper connection. People only really care about what they know about, so it's so important to teach people about nature and about foraging, especially children when they're young. My children love foraging, they love nature. So reasons to forage. So foraging is making a bit of a comeback, and I for one am going to share my knowledge and make sure that I can teach as many people as I can about foraging. It's a great way to connect with nature. The food is free, it's organic, although you've just got to make sure that it's away from farms and roadsides and dog muck and dog pee as well. It's much more nutritionally dense. As I said, the roots dig down really deep into the ground, unlike the farm produce that you can get. There's also much less food miles, so we're not getting food from miles and miles away. In fact, not just miles away, from other countries. It can come from the parks and the fields just locally to you. So we get rid of all those food miles and all the pollution that's created with driving it everywhere and getting it into supermarket. It gets you outside too, which is great for your well-being, great physically, good exercise. And when you've been out for a lovely walk, I don't know about you, but I feel so much better. It can be fun for the whole family to enjoy too. It gives us like a purpose as well for a walk. If I say to my children we're going for a walk, they're like, oh, I don't like going for a walk. But if we're going for an adventure, or we're going to find something in particular, they're a little bit more up for it, and they'll walk for miles and miles without even realising. When you learn about nature, you care about nature, and it's so important to care about nature. It also offers you food security. I know just recently with COVID and everything that's happened, there were times, and they still are at the moment actually, with Brexit and I think wagon drivers being unwell and not being able to deliver food, there isn't as much food security, because if the supermarkets have about 3 days worth of food, and then it's all gone. So if something were to happen again, maybe COVID or something a little bit more worse, we might not have food instantly there. But if you know about foraging and you can forage, it's a bit of peace of mind that, you know, at the end of the day, I'll still be able to feed my family. Lots of people don't start foraging because they're a little bit scared too. They're worried about the law, and they feel that they're going to get in trouble if they go foraging. In England, we're really lucky. We've got a common law that allows us to forage. We are allowed to pick the 4 F's, so fruit, flowers, fungi and foliage. we are allowed to pick them as long as it's for personal use, and as long as it's growing in the wild. Obviously you can't go foraging in somebody else's garden unless you've got permission. More information about this can be found at the Wildlife and Countryside Act, which is in 1981 that was brought about, so check that out if you want to know a little bit more. If you were trying to forage to make money by selling your foraged products, you're not covered by that law then, so do make sure that it is for your own personal use unless you're growing it or you have the landowner's permit. We cannot trespass. We do need to make sure we've got the landowner's permission. Even if it's a farm, it's still a farmer's land. Usually they aren't going to mind if you just ask them, but you can't just go and start picking loads of things, especially if it's their crops that they are growing and selling to make their living. There are plenty of places that we can forage though, which are hedgerows, parks, fields, woods, rights of way along the sides of them. You can go to uproot a plant. So some plants, their roots are really good, really tasty, really medicinal, but you can't uproot them if it's not on your own land or if you haven't got the owner's permission. And it makes sense really, because if you are going to uproot a plant, that plant is going to die. It's not going to be able to grow again. So you must also make sure that it's growing in abundance. You also can't pick any plants that are on the endangered list. There's a Schedule 8 endangered list, and anything on there you're not allowed to pick, which, you know, obviously makes sense if it's endangered. This also ensures that foragers do not strip the land bare, and we're looking after the natural environment, which I know that I do and so many other foragers do. It just wouldn't make any sense to strip it bare, because then nothing's going to grow next year. You're not going to have a food source next year. You're not going to see those beautiful plants. So it does make sense to make sure that you just take what you need. You also cannot take from a site of special interest, a site of special scientific interest, an SSSI, because usually that is either endangered or it's a special site and they're looking into it and they're conserving it. I know one of my friends has some land and it's the moss there that's got the SSSI on, so that land is protected and they can't do anything with it. There are many plants that are extremely rare, so it's important to allow them to reproduce, so that's why we have some of the conservations and countryside acts. Plants, the trees, the fungi, they all have a right to live and to reproduce. Respect the plants and allow them to grow and allow them to reproduce for their own good and for our own good too. If we forage and we move too much, then the plants will die. A little trim, however, here and there isn't going to cause any harm at all. Only ever take what you need. Don't take any more, especially don't take it and waste it, because that's not good foraging at all. And only ever take and harvest from places where the plant or the fungi or whatever you're taking is growing in abundance. If there isn't much of it, just leave it. Find another place where there is. I'm sure there will be. Just let that one grow, and maybe keep an eye on it, see how it goes next year or in the following weeks. I know I had a gorgeous elderberry tree that just was across the road from me, and it's been absolutely amazing for years, and it's growing loads of flowers, and I'd always take the bottom ones because they'd always get damaged by people walking past anyway, so as soon as they was ready I'd forage them. And then the same with the berries, but unfortunately somebody hacked it to bits this year, so I feel really sad about that. There's only a tiny bit of it left, and the way it's been hacked away, it leaves it open for infection, and I don't know if it's going to survive. I don't know if I should clean the wound up a little bit. Saw it so it's a straight edge. I'm getting sidetracked here, but if a plant, if a tree's branch is all jagged, the water, the moisture, the bacteria, the mushrooms, the insects can get inside to it, and just like it would in an open wound on our arm or something. But if you cut it nice and straight, then that is less likely to happen. So yeah, there's only a little bit left of that tree now, so I'm not going to forage from that. I'm hopefully just going to give it time. Hopefully in a few years it'll recover and it'll flourish again. So if you find a particular plant that hasn't done particularly well, do leave it and let it flourish, and don't take anything. It is important to use your common sense, really. And a good rule of thumb is only take about 20%. I know that's hard to envisage, but if you're only taking about 20%, this isn't like a dead set, this is the rule. But if you're only taking that much, you're leaving a percentage for the plant to reproduce, for another forager maybe, for animals, for wildlife, and enough for it to regrow. So yeah, 10 to 20%. I did mention about trespass and bylaws just briefly, so it's important not to trespass. You might get asked to leave by a disgruntled farmer, or if it's a neighbour and you're just foraging in their garden without permission, it might come across that you're crazy. So you do ask permission. It's fine on common land, but it's actually theft if it's on private land. You can't just go into somebody's garden and start picking their apples from their apple tree without asking, although most of the time they're fine. So do ask. Don't worry that you might seem crazy. I know my new neighbours had only just moved into the house next door, and they'd grown some mushrooms. There were chanterelles on their lawn. I don't know why they grow in their garden and not mine. And I was like, excuse me, can I have those mushrooms? And before you cut your grass and cut the mushrooms, and she was like looking at me so crazy. She was like, yeah, why is it for the kids? Is it a science experiment? I was like, oh no, you can eat them. Would you like me to cook you some? And she was like, oh no, but you can have them. So yeah, do ask. You might come across a little crazy if they're not used to forages, but don't worry about it. There are also bylaws in certain places, like certain government places, like National Trust, or what's the other one? Maybe certain councils have put things up by nature reserves or Natural England, and they will always have bylaws to stop you picking or stop you going in certain places, but usually there'll be signs up if that is the case, so you'll be aware. So you've decided to forage, you know the law, you've got to keep safe. Keeping safe involves making sure that you are 100% positive on your identification of any plant or mushroom that you cook and serve and eat. And I mean like 100%. If it was 99%, just don't do it. It's not worth it. You really need to make sure that you are fully positive on your identification. Now, a good way to do this is have 2 to 3 identification books and look in them. Each book written slightly different, have different information, have different pictures. It's a good idea to get one with photos, because people do drawings sometimes and it's really hard to check your identification against somebody's drawing. But if it's somebody's photo, you can really see what it is and if it's the same one. So yeah, do get ones with photos. By all means, get one with drawings, but use your 3 that you get that have photos in for your identification purposes. So yeah, you can use these 3 books then to cross-reference, check all the information. Where's its habitat? Where does it normally grow? What season? What type of year? What it looks like? What type of tree? If it's mushroom, what type of tree it grows on? If it's like damp areas or a dry area, or if it comes in February, or if it's grown in July. So then you can think, oh well, yeah, definitely it grows in July, and it's July now, and it grows in forests where it's quite damp, and this is near the canal or the river, so it's ticked all those boxes. Then look at the plants itself, You use your sense of smell as well. Does it smell like it's supposed to? You might not always know to start with, but your sense of smell eventually will grow and you'll be able to identify some plants by their smell. Does it feel like it's supposed to as well? Once you can start feeling a few different leaves, that can help you identify them. I'm not sounding too crazy, but use all your senses to help you identify plants. Most of the books do have a little bit information about the senses, what it smells like, what it looks like, what it tastes like, although don't taste it until you're 100%, where it's growing, the habitat. Only your sense of smell. Does it feel right? Does it sound right? And then you can also check that it's not got any poisonous lookalikes. And if it has, do be extra vigilant and really check. And I'm happy to check and help, although I can't always do it through pictures. Sometimes you need to actually see the plant underneath it, everything about it, but I will help as much as I can. Once you've done all your testing and you feel quite confident, it's a good idea to do a bit of a taste test. Now, not just put it in your mouth and eat it. A taste test is just making sure that you're not allergic or you have any reactions and no other adverse side effects or poisonings. Now what you need to do first of all is prepare the plant or the mushroom however it says so in the book, because some plants and mushrooms you can't eat unless they're cooked in a certain way for a certain time, so do check on how you're supposed to cook them. Once you've done that, take a really small part of the plant and just rub it on the inside of your lip where it's a little bit more moist, and then wait for 20 minutes. I know it might seem like a hard thing, but just put it on the inside of your lip and just wait. After this time has elapsed and if everything's been fine, then you might want to take one small bite and then again wait another 20 minutes. If you do have a reaction from it just touching the inside of your lip, then that's a pretty sure sign that it's a no-go. You're either allergic to it or it's poisonous, but because it's only touched the inside of your lip, you're going to be okay. You know, there's not going to be any severe problems in this situation. So if you followed all these steps, you've done your ID, you've done the lip test, you've done the taste test, just one small bite, waited 20 minutes, and you've got no reaction, you've probably identified your plant correctly. Now some of the plants you might think, oh, I don't really need to do this, but it's a good idea to do it anyway, such as say nettles, maybe you know, or dandelions, that pretty much, you know, I know this plant, I've known it since a child, but it's still a good idea to do. Just take your time. There is absolutely no rush. Learning anything properly doesn't happen all at once. It takes time, so it's really important for you to take time. Don't try and rush and learn loads of facts at once, because it's just not how our brain works. It can't take in loads of facts, although some people's brains probably do work like that, not mine anyway. It takes time to learn something fuller. Just choose a few plants, identify them, see them at all the times of year, see them what they grow out like when they start in spring and then to summer, and see what they look like in autumn and in winter, and identify them through all the phases and all the different ways they look. And then once you've done this, and you start working with them, start cooking with them, maybe making burning sticks. After that, then it'll just sink in. You'll remember them because you've identified them, you've kept looking for them in different places, you've read books about them, you've started using them in recipes, and then it'll start to stay in your head, and before long you won't need to look them up. You'll just go, I know what that is. Just like, you know, like, oh, that's a shoe, or that's a chicken, that's a goat, that's a cow. You'll know, and then you'll know all the facts, like cows have 4 legs, cows like to eat grass, you can milk cows, all different facts that you will know will stay because you've slowly learnt them. So 2 to 3 plants a year would suffice, you know. Otherwise you run the risk of getting your facts mixed up and making mistakes. So don't rush, take a few plants. If you've got more time to dedicate, maybe if you can concentrate a lot of time, then yeah, maybe do 2 to 3 a month and work with plants that way, and then you can build it up. But don't rush, take your time, and then maybe you'll learn about the plants and you'll revisit them again at another time, and then next time it'll sink in and it'll be a little bit easier. So I will be telling you about loads and loads of plants and what you can do with them, but don't worry about doing everything. Just, you could watch my videos, you can learn about a few of the plants, and then go identify them. If you're feeling confident, you can cook with them or use them, and then eventually, maybe next year, you could recap, look at them, and then it'll sink in a lot quicker because you've already had that pre-knowledge. There is one plant in particular that I would warn you off, and this is the umbellifer plants. It's best to avoid these plants. They're part of the carrot family. Until you've been foraging quite a long time and you've researched these for a long time and you're really, really confident, I would just avoid them because there are quite a lot of the family that are deadly. They've got a lot of lookalikes. They've all got really small white flowers, and their leaves can all look quite similar. You've got to check a number of really specific things, like chop their stem and check what their stem shape is. Tiny little bits on the leaves, tiny parts where the hairs are, little blotches at certain point of the stem to really identify these plants. So this is definitely not a beginner plant, is the umbellifer plant. So yeah, leave them away. We've got like carrots in there, cow parsley or fool's parsley, hemlock water drop, hogweed. There's quite a few, even the giant hogweed, and some of them are just poisonous, or not poisonous, but you can get a bad reaction just from their sap. So do avoid them until you're really, really confident. It takes quite a while to feel confident with these plants. So there's Food for Free by Richard Maybe. That is a really good one, really big pictures as well. And there's another little one called Food for Free by Collins Gems. It's just a tiny little pocket one, which is really good because you can take that out with you. There's the Forager's Calendar by John Wright, and that's really good because that has different it goes through the season, so you can look like, oh, it's September, what's out in September. So that's quite a good one, although the climate's changing a bit, isn't it? So it's not always as guaranteed as it used to be. There's Wild Food UK Foraging Pocket Guide 2. I can't remember who does that, but I'll find that out. There's also Adele Knows That does 2 really good books. I'm not sure if I'm saying her last name right, but Adele Nosdar, she has the Hedgerow Handbook, which is really good, and it's got lots of information about the plants, and it's got recipes, really quite simple ones as well. She also does a foraging with kids one, which is really good. Adele Nosdar does 2 really good books. The only thing with those books is they don't have photos in, they've got drawings, so it's good to have a couple of others as well to help you. There's also Wild Food, a complete forager's guide, and that's by Roger Phillips. That is a really good one. And Roger Phillips also does a really good mushroom book. It's called A Comprehensive Guide to Mushrooms, so that's a really good one. And there's also a Collins book, Complete Guide to British Mushrooms and Toadstools. It's really good for identifying mushrooms. None of these books cover everything. There are so many plants that are out there and that are available. A book couldn't possibly cover everything, and there's also sometimes some contradictory advice where some people will say this is okay to eat and someone else will say it's not. Usually it's not something poisonous. An example of this, like some people say acorns are poisonous. Acorns, if you just ate them on their own, are poisonous, but if you leach them, it takes quite a long time. You've got to run them through water, keep changing the water to wash out all the tannins. It's quite a long processing time, but then you can use the acorns, you can grind them up and use them as breads and cakes, and it's really nutty, it's really tasty. With all plants, even supermarket plants, there are some cautions. If you eat too much of them, you can get ill. When it comes to like plums or bananas, if you eat too much, you are going to get an upset stomach and a bit of diarrhea. So do watch out for any cautions on the wild plants too, especially if you are pregnant or if you are taking medication. Lots to get you started there with foraging, lots of really good reasons why you should be foraging. So lovely. Go and do it. Just even if it's just blackberries and you make a blackberry pie, it's a great way to start, a great way to build your confidence, a great way to connect with nature. And those are not sprayed with pesticides. They might be a little bit smaller, but they're not modified, so it's even better for you. So go on, enjoy foraging.